today's episode we are speaking to Albert Edward Tawfiq Saad, who was one of the founding members of the Coptic Church and the Coptic community in Melbourne, Australia. Albert, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
So when you first arrived in Melbourne, how many Coptic Egyptians do you think there were in Melbourne?
I remember Egyptian at that time in 1967. I found around about 5 people, which I remember I saw. Increased after that.
Right, and were you meeting them for church, or what were you doing in terms of your spiritual faith?
Actually, we do it as a faith. We help anyone. We help everyone. Anyone who needs the help, we give him the help, no matter.
Right.
But we found out that that's the people we help. They are all from our church or Egyptian. And they come to us. Even it's not Egyptian, or even we help him, but mostly we help the Egyptian. And I found out that most of them in my church now.
Right, and where those few people, where were you going to church?
Sorry?
Where were you going to church?
That time was no church.
Right.
That time was no church. We just put them in accommodation, and next week, start Monday, we take them to work. I take the father to so many places to find a work.
Right. I heard in those early days there was a gathering of the Coptic community at Khalil Latif's unit. You were going there for informal church gatherings, and that you were part of that. Can you remember that?
Khalil Latif is one of the person which I met him and take him from the ship to a place to live. We find a room for him in South Melbourne. I remember in a house, Greek house, and there was lady take him and he lived in this place.
Okay.
And after that, Khalil was a really helpful person because he's a deacon, and he loved the church. But that's in the past. And in the beginning, before that, was so many people which starting the church. We want to pray somewhere we don't find. We have to find a place to pray. Where we go? That's the question for all of the people around that time. When we reach 20 people or something like that, said, okay. Some of us said, we have no place church. We have to go. What do you think about Church of All Nations? We said, all right, Church of All Nations, we are a nation. We go and pray to all church, this church. Okay, we discussed with us, we decided to go. We went to that church, which Coptic Church, and when we go there, we pray, and after that we go home. Actually, I think we felt not happy about that, because the system, when you go to a church and they pray there is someone come in the middle of the pray for communion. He stop in the end of the mass that on the first sit, and they go for communion, and another one, and another one. They find no one of us go to have a communion. That's the point which they didn't like. They want us to join and get in. I remember one person or two, they used to go and take the communion with them.
How long were you going
One
to
of
that
them-
church for?
Sorry?
How long were you going to the All Nations Church for?
We've been in Uniting Church for a certain period, about 6 months or 3 months, something like that. I'm not exactly sure about because when we started to go there, we start one by one, until we getting together to many people of us, we go there. We even invite everybody, come on to go and pray. But when we feel that they are not happy, and we feel that we are not happy too, because we need a communion, we cannot take it. I cannot take a communion, not belong to my church.
Okay, so
We stop.
what did you
I
decide to
discussed this
do?
matter with Alphonse,
Yes.
particularly this point. I discussed it with Alphonse. We said, Alphonse, what you can do? He said, no, we are Coptic Orthodox. We cannot take the communion from the all nation. We pray and we join them, it's okay. But the communion, we cannot have it there. We must have our church communion. And they're not happy. And then we decide, Alphonse, me, and some other people, that we start our church. He said, actually, Alphonse, he said, we have to start a church ourselves. We can go sit and make the retil and Agbeya. That's it, until priest come. Okay, and then we have to find another place, not Church of a Nation. Where we go? We decide, a friend of us said, oh, come to my place, I have a room that we can sit there and pray together. That person was, his name is Latif and Cecile. Two people, couple marriage, and that house was in Albert Park. And in that place was living as well to Naguib Zaki. And we go there, used to pray Agbeya and Taratil, and pray after that, and we go home. And then after a couple of weeks, one of us, he said, I think we have to collect some donation for starting the church. Except, of course, everybody loved the church. Everybody want to help the church. He said, okay. We discussed this matter and find out someone, his name is Sami Hasaballah, and his wife as well too. He used to collect the money, and the money was few cents, 5 cents, 10 cents, because in that time when we got $20 or $30, it's a big limit. You can pay 10 cents, 20 cents, $1, $5, whatever it is. But it's all together peanuts, according to the dollar now. Anyway, that is the way we started with penny. We put it and collected, and Sami Hasaballah collected this money for that place, and Cecile and Latif, they were in that place, and they have another cousin living there, and Naguib Zaki and Eva in that place. So it was, I believe, that's where the church born. And after that, the people is too many now. We have to find another place. That house is not enough. Then we decided to go out, and we find out in the church, in all of the situation happening in Richmond and Church Street, and in many places after that. And the place we find a room for us to pray. We go there and pray and collect, and that's where the church started and kept going.
And how did you hear about Abuna Mina Namatala coming to Australia? And tell us about that church group, what they did to assist Abuna Mina Namatala start his first Coptic liturgy in Melbourne, and then he continued in Melbourne, coming every month.
It was really a very surprise when we found out that Sydney has a priest coming. We said, Abuna Mina Namatala coming to Melbourne. Why we don't have a communion? We have to ask him and find out what he can do. I said, all right, we go to the ship in the morning, and the ship coming, and we saw Abuna Mina coming from the ship, and he had Albert and another son, his children. He has Albert, his son, and another one.
Yeah, he has a few children. Yeah, he would have had 2 boys back then.
I know, I'm sure that 2 boys, because I serve with them first mass.
Right.
Yeah. And Alfonso as well too. Anyway, We've been told before that Abuna Nina coming to Melbourne. Anyway, we went to the day to the church and called us. Everybody talked to the other, and we went there and said, Abuna, we are here in Melbourne. We need a communion because we haven't been take a communion for such time. And we don't know when we're going to take a communion. He said, all right, you are Orthodox, you wait a communion, you take a communion. There is a place, Abuna, we go there and we make praying there, Mass. He said, all right, we go. We had nothing, but Abuna Mina bring with him Sharia and bring Sanaya and bring everything, what did the Mass need. And then Abuna Mina, we went to the place, we discussed it with the church and told them we need to have a communion, and our father come from the sheep, he would come and make the Mass, and after that we go. He said, all right, we can do. And we pay a donation, they accept, it's not a problem. We make the Mass and we have the communion, and the officially church that having first communion in Melbourne by Abuna Mina Ni'matullah.
Right, and I understand that was the first Coptic Mass in Australia.
Yes.
Right, and how did you feel about that? Were you happy?
Of course.
Yeah. And in terms of, in January this year, January this year just passed, so 24th of January 2019, marks the 50-year milestone of Abuna Mina Ni'matullah doing the first Coptic liturgy in Australia.
Yeah.
How do you feel being one of the original Coptic Egyptians to start the church in Melbourne, Australia?
To be honest, I didn't want this interview, and I didn't want to appear. It's hardly for me myself, because I live my life quiet. I'm not the person who likes to talk or speak. I'm not a good speaker. But in my heart, I want to serve. I like to do that. And most of my service, I done it by myself, by my heart, by my faith. That's what I feel. But to come and show up myself, I am one of the old people, I didn't like that, honestly. But I searched myself, I discussed with myself again, I find out that if I didn't do it, who will? And the truth of the starting, it will be disappeared and will be buried in somewhere, and nobody know who and how, all of these things. And then I decided, I said, okay, it's okay for me, we can go and show up what happened at the time, because we have a generation coming behind us. They should know what happened and how much we suffer and how much we face in this life here in Australia, because we start all of the 5 days of the week we go to working, and end of the week there is no work. We watch up ourselves until we go to pray only. That is the only thing. And after that, another week and another week and another week. There is nothing we can do, you know. So the history must show up.
Thank you very much for giving your time today and reflecting on the many stories since your migration to Melbourne, Australia in 1967, and marking the occasion of 50 years.